Good morning, Zalman. How are you?
Good morning.
Okay, let's get started over here. Oh, 1 second. The internet got closed. While we're waiting to start, let us offer a prayer for our brothers and sisters in New York, and let us remember that no matter who wins, we know who's in charge. Okay. Good morning, Zalman. Good morning, Adiak. And I guess Chaim will join soon. Let me see if I can pop out the chat box so that I can still see it. There we go. Okay, put that up there. Okay. Can't make it smaller. Um, okay, I think this is where we were up to. No. Okay. We learned in the Mishnah, if wine came before them during the meal, Ariak, if you want, you can see on the screen I have over here a copy of a translation version of the Talmud. We learned in the Mishnah, if a wine came before them during the meal, each and every diner recites blessing over the wine for himself. If the wine came after the meal, one recites a blessing on behalf of them all. The Tosefta relates, they asked Ben Zoma, why did the sages say that if wine came before them during the meal, everyone makes a blessing over the wine for themselves, but if wine came after the meal, one can recite a blessing on behalf of them all? He said to them, this is because while people are eating, the throat is not available. If one recites a blessing on behalf of everyone, he would have to wait until everyone finishes eating and gets themselves ready to drink the wine together, so as not to impose upon everyone that everyone has to stop eating and then get ready to drink, and so that the one person can make the blessing and everyone can drink the wine. The sages ruled that there is no need to recite the blessing together. And each and every person, as they finish their bites, they make a blessing, they drink, and then get back to eating. The Mishnah also said that the person who recites the blessing over the wine at the end of the meal also recites the blessing over the incense. Sorry. I thought that it was about the wine after the meal. It seems to be that it was the guy who says the blessing over the wine in the beginning of the meal. He also recites the blessing over the incense, although the incense is brought only after the meal. The Gemara asks, from the fact that the Mishnah taught that this person is the one who has to recite the blessing over the incense, it can be inferred that there is someone who should take precedence over him to recite the blessing. Otherwise, why would the Mishnah have to emphasize that this person should be making the blessing over the incense as well? If we're choosing the greatest person among us to make the blessing over the wine, then we're going to also, of course, choose him to make the blessing over the incense. So if the Mishnah doesn't take that for granted, that must mean that there is someone else who should be doing the blessing over the incense. So the question is, why does the one who recited the blessing over the wine nevertheless recite the blessing over the incense, even though someone greater is here?
So if the wine is before dinner, one person makes it for everyone.
Yeah, so if the wine is before dinner, one person makes a blessing for everyone. If wine is after dinner, then one person makes a blessing for everyone. But if the
That's it.
wine is during the meal, that instead of making everybody stop eating so that we could make it a big announcement and one guy can make the blessing and everyone else can drink, everyone just drinks, makes a blessing and drinks at their own leisure.
But if the blessing is before dinner, then you don't have to make the blessing while during dinner.
Correct, if you're still in the same space.
Yeah.
The Gemara responds and answers this that the reason is because since he was the one who was the first one to wash his hands after the meal, we're going to explain more about that later, before they did the grace after meals, he is also the one who recites the blessing over the incense, because the washing of the hands after the meal and the burning of the incense serve similar functions. We're going to learn soon what those functions are. The Gemara comments, this supports the opinion of Rav. As Rav Chia bar Ashi says in the name of Rav, he who washes his hands first after the meal is designated to recite the blessing of grace after meals. Evidently, being given priority in performing one mitzvah related to the meal results in that person being given priority with regard to other mitzvahs that relate to the meal. The Gemara relates, Rav and Rabbi Chia were seated before Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi at a meal. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said to Rav, stand and wash your hands. Rav Chia saw that Rav was trembling because Rav thought that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was criticizing him for eating too much or for having dirty hands. Rabbi Chia said to Rav, son of nobleman, he is telling you to review grace after meals because since you are going to be the one that he's going to choose to lead the grace after meals, he told you that you should be the first one to wash your hands as well. No reason to be afraid. Well, now that we've mentioned the fact that incense makes that you make a blessing over the smell of burning incense, the Gemara proceeds to discuss various halachas that deal with the blessings recited over incense. Rab Zera said that Rava bar Yirmiyah said, from where does one recite the blessing? From when does one recite the blessing over the scent of incense? From when the column of smoke arises after the incense has been placed upon the coals. Rab Zera said to Rava bar Yirmiyah, but at that point he has not yet smelled it. As soon as you put the coals down on the smoke, the coals down. As soon as you put the incense down on the smoke and you have a column rising already, at that point you haven't yet smelled it. So why would you make the blessing if you don't yet smell it? What do you answer, Zalman? Or Ariak? You can cheat if you
You
want.
lit it because you lit it.
I'm going to let you cheat. Look further in the text. It's a brilliant answer.
Incense smell. Okay.
Whenever you make a blessing on food, what happens first? You ate it already, or you make the blessing before you eat? So just like you make a blessing before you eat, so too you make a blessing before you smell the scent. So he says, according to your reasoning, the blessing Hamotzi, who brings forth bread from the earth, that one recites before eating bread, at that point he has not eaten yet from it. And we all know that you make the blessing before you eat. Rather, in that case, one recites the blessing when he intends to eat. Here too, you're making the blessing because you're about to smell it. Rav Chia, the son of Abba bar Nachmani, said in the name of Rav Chisda, who said in the name of Rav, and some say it was Rav Chisda quoting Zeiri. Over all the incense one recites who creates fragrant trees. except for musk, which is extracted from a living creature and over which one resides, who creates various spices. Does anyone know what kind of a living creature musk comes from?
Um, a kind of some type of wild cattle, like a bison or a
If
bull
I'm not mistaken, it's called a musk deer, but I'm gonna check it up.
or a musk ox.
Sorry?
A musk ox.
A
OX.
musk ox? Well, musk doesn't pull up that. I have to do a musk scent to find out where that comes from.
Yeah.
A musk deer. But is
Mhm.
there another kind of where does musk come from? Let's see. Where does musk? Watch Google tell me South Africa. Oh no. The male musk deer. It's a semi-liquid, but it dries to a grainy powder and it's used in perfumes. Okay. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that mushka is Russian for musk. Our daughter Chaya Mushka, that we call Mushka, that is her name. The Gemara raises an objection based on what was taught in. So we said there's two different blessings. If your blessing is a plant-based blessing, then you'll say the blessing who creates fragrant trees. And if your blessing is not from a plant base, then you will say who creates various spices. Borei minei v'samim, which definitely in the Chabad custom, and I think is a prevailing custom world over, that we make this blessing also by Havdalah. When we smell the spices by Havdalah, we make this blessing Borei minei v'samim. And we're going to learn later that the same way how, if you remember, we had an argument whether about foods that come from the ground. Do you make a special blessing over each of the various kinds of each of the various kinds of things, like the leafy vegetables and the regular vegetables and the beans and the legumes? Or does everything that comes from the ground get its just one blessing who brings forth fruits from the ground? We're going to have the same thing about spices. There are some people who say, or some opinions, that every category of spice receives its own blessing. The spice of trees or the spice of leaves or things like that. We're going to learn that soon. The Gemara raises an objection based on what was taught in a Brisa that the only time one will recite the blessing who creates fragrant trees is if it's balsam from the house of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, or balsam from the house of the Caesar, or myrtle everywhere else. That's the only time where you're going to make the blessing who creates fragrant trees. Everything else, you'll make the blessing who creates various kinds of blessings, various kinds of scents. Whereas the previous statement said that over any kind of incense that is plant-based, you would make the blessing who creates fragrant trees. The Gemara comments, indeed, is a conclusive refutation. Okay, now what happens if you're not smelling the balsam tree, but Rav Chisda said to Rav Yitzchak, this balsam oil, do people still use balsam?
What is it? I never heard of it.
Find out soon. What is balsam and fragrance? Balsams basically trickle out of trees, flower pods, or bushy twigs. Balsam means a resin which is rich in essential oil.
Mm-hmm.
Peru balsam, which is initially dark and thick, comes from pods which grow out of the branches and trunk of the Myroloxan balsamamum tree, a name that means fragrant wood in Greece. Let's look for balsam wood.
Yeah.
Okay, well that looks like a tree.
Yeah,
Um,
balsam. balsam wood. That's the very light, flexible wood, like they make kites out of and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Model airplanes and
I feel like that might have been the first wood that I made a carving with, was balsam
probably
wood.
was, probably was.
It didn't have a very strong smell.
Well, it was processed. By the time it got to you, the smell was processed out.
You're saying it doesn't have the resin, meaning this resin that comes out of it is like this essential oils that drip out of some place in the
Did they have
okay.
pine trees? Did they have pine trees back? Yeah, they had pine trees back in the Middle Ages, and
But they had Christmas trees, so
yeah,
did they? They did, right?
they had yeah, and pine trees are very fragrant.
Right. I wonder if that's what it is. I had someone told me that no, whatever. It's not even worth repeating. Okay. So if you have balsam oil, which is basically like essential oils, it seems, that comes from the balsam tree or any kind of tree. What blessing does one recite over it? Rabbi Yitzchak said to him, this is what Rabbi Yehuda said. One recites who creates the oil of our land. Because at that time, balsam was only growing in the land of Israel in the Jordan Valley. Okay. Rav Chisda said to him, except for Rav Yehuda, for whom the land of Israel was extremely beloved, and therefore he mentioned it in his blessing. What does everyone else recite over balsam oil? Meaning, Rav Yehuda is beautiful and he loved the Holy Land so strongly that if there was any blessing that he could include the land of Israel in, he did. But what about other people? He said to him, this is what Rabbi Yochanan said, one recites who creates pleasant oils. Okay. Rav Ada Barava said over costus. Have you ever heard of costus?
No,
A plant.
looks like a flower.
Yeah. The costus root is used for treating worm infections. The oil is used for asthma, used to treat cholera. A flavoring component. What does it smell like? An intensely animalic opening reminiscent of unwashed hair and warm animal fur.
Ugh.
Creamy, fatty undertones. That doesn't sound like something I would want to smell.
Mm.
Let's see, costus fragrance.
Wet
A
dogs do
burst
not
of
smell
warm
good.
pepper and dry papyrus sounds better to me than that. Okay. Well, it seems like people sell it. Okay. So over costus, which is a spice, one recites who creates fragrant trees. But over oil that was pressed with spices to absorb their scents, one does not recite that blessing. So they have oils which are infused with various kinds of spicing, you would make a different blessing. However, Rav Kahana said, even over oil pressed with spices, one recites, who creates fragrant trees, but not over oil into which spices were ground. So if the spices are still in there, if they were ground into the oil, then you wouldn't. The sages of Nahardah say, even over oil in which spices were ground, which is of even lower quality, one will still recite the blessing who creates fragrant trees. Page 43a is complete. Let's move on to 43b. I'm just going to take off my jacket. I'm going to make it a little cooler in here, and I'll be right back. Okay, my apologies. Okay, Rav Gidl said in the name of Rav over jasmine. Okay, I think jasmine we've heard of. One recites who creates fragrant trees. Rav Hananel said that Rav said over these spikenards that grow next to the sea. Have you ever heard of a spikenard?
Uh-huh.
Sorry?
No.
No. Okay, what's a spikenard? Aromatic amber-colored essential oil that comes from Nardostachys jatamansi, a flowering plant. Okay. Which grow next to the sea, one recites, it creates fragrant trees. Marzitra said, what is the verse from which we derive that even a plant with soft stalks can be called a tree? In other words, this is a plant which is not a tree. So how can you say the blessing who creates fragrant trees? And we spent a long time discussing what is considered a tree and what is not. And a plant is very much not considered a tree. So he says we have a hint that in some circumstances, not when it comes to making blessings over what is categorized as a tree and what is categorized as a plant, but over here when it comes to spices, we can look at the verse in Joshua where the lady from Jericho took the two Jewish spies up to the roof and hidden them under the trees of flax. So over here we can see that even stalks of flax were referred to as trees. Rav Mesharshia says, over this garden daffodil, I think we've heard of those, one recites who creates fragrant trees, while over a wild daffodil that grows in the field, one recites who creates fragrant plants. Rav Shesha says, over fragrant violets, one recites who creates fragrant plants. Marzutra says, one who smells an esrog or a quince recites, blessed are you, Lord our God, who gave pleasant fragrance in fruits. On a related topic, the Gemara recites that Rav Yehuda said, one who goes out during Nisan, which is the time that the buds are beginning to blossom, and sees trees that are blossoming, makes a special blessing over the trees. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has withheld nothing from his world and has created in it beautiful creatures and trees for human beings to enjoy. Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia said that Rav said, from where is it derived that one recites a blessing over scent? As the verse states in Psalms, let every soul praise the Lord. He explains the verse, what is it from which the soul derives benefit and the body does not derive benefit from it? When is there something that only your soul derives benefit, but not your body? Why is it that King David of blessed memory said, let every soul praise the Lord? You must say that that is referring to scent, even over items from which only the soul derives benefit. One must recite a blessing and praise God. Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia said, in the name of Rav, the young men of Israel are destined to emit a sweet scent as the Lebanon. As it is stated, his branches shall spread, and his beauty will be as the olive tree, and his fragrance as the Lebanon. And Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia said, in the name of Rav, what is the meaning of that which is written? He made everything beautiful in its time, and he has placed the world in their heart. Yet so, man cannot find out the work that God has done from the beginning even to the end. This teaches that each and every individual, God has made his work pleasant for him in his own eyes. In that way, each individual will be satisfied with his work, enabling the world to function properly. God caused that everyone is going to enjoy the specific kind of work that they enjoy. So that way we have people who are happy to be lawyers and people who are happy to be garbage cleaners. People are happy to be IT or what is that called? Like white collar jobs, and people are happy to have blue collar jobs. And that way is the only way that the world can exist. Rav Papa said, this is the proverb that people say, hang a heart of palms on a pig, and he will continue to perform his standard activities. Although hearts of palm are a delicacy, a pig will roll it in the mud as is his wont. Every creature has its own particular tastes, and one cannot draw conclusions with regards to one based on the standards of another. Interesting. I've never heard that expression before. What is it? If you're a nail, everything's a hammer?
Now, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
That's what I meant. Thank you. And Rav Zutra Vartovia said in the name of Rav, for one walking on a dark path, if he has a torch in his hand, it is as if there were two people walking on that path, and the light of the moon is like three. In other words, when you're walking, you could be scared if you're walking on a dark path. If you're walking with a light, then you're comfortable as if there were two people. And if you have the light of the moon, it's as if there were three. Now, the Gemara is trying to explain this. Is a torch like two, including the one carrying the torch? Or perhaps the torch is like two beside him for a total of three? When he says that if a torch in your hand is like two people, does that mean that the torch itself is like two people? Or the torch is like you and someone else? How much comfort does a torch bring? Come and hear a proof from that which Rav said, the moon is like three. Granted, if you say three including him, all works out well. However, if you say three beside him, why do I need four? What purpose do they serve? What's the purpose of walking with four? Didn't the master say to one person walking alone, a demon can be seen and cause him harm? To two people, a demon can be seen and not cause them harm. To three people, it's not allowed to be seen at all. Four people are no better than three. Rather, we could learn from here that a torch is like two, meaning two including him. And the Gemara comments indeed conclude from this. Anyone have any questions?
Seems I don't think, doesn't seem like that's what it's saying. It's saying if you have a torch, if you're alone, you're alone. And if you have a torch, it's like you had another person there with you. And if it's not like, which was two, in other words, it's like two people. The torch is a person and the moon is two people.
Right. I
Right?
agree. That is what it seems to be saying. So here I want to interject with some history, which is demons are very much exist in Jewish tradition. In fact, many of the enactments of our sages had to do with demons. There are certain paragraphs that we say on Friday night. It used to be that the synagogue was not in the center of the city like we have today, but was out in the field. And out in the fields is the place where the demons have jurisdiction.
So why was it put out in the field then?
That is a good question. I don't know why the synagogues were specifically out in the fields, but that was what it was. So on Friday nights, when people would sometimes come late to synagogue and it's a very short prayer, there are extra paragraphs that are added at the end of the prayer, specifically so that people shouldn't be left behind in the synagogue and be caused to walk home by themselves, putting them at risk of being injured or harmed by a demon. In recent years, I would say in the early 1700s, there was a great rabbi by the name of Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem, succeeded by Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, who commanded the demons to not show up ever again in civilization or to people. And since then, we haven't really heard much about demons. There are rare cases that you hear about a dibuk or stuff like that. But up until then, I mean, there's a very interesting story. Let me see if I can pop it in the chat box here. It's a rather scary story, but Let me see if this has the whole story here. Um, this isn't written in so much detail. Let's see if this one is better. Where is this? Why don't we see? No, this is no. I'll spend another minute, and if I don't, I'm sure that him. Okay, this is not the most creepy version of it, but the general detail is there. You can copy it out of the chat box if you want, and then you can read it later. You have access to that, Zaman? Does it work? And Nadia?
Excellent.
Yeah, okay. So you can open that up and you can read it after. But in the times of the Talmud, and you can look at this later as well, you'll see that there's a lot of literature about demons. So what he's saying here is that even in those days, if there was one person, then demons were allowed to harm him. If there were two people walking together, the demons would be allowed to um, appear, but not to cause them harm. And if there were three people, the demons had to stay hidden. Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia said in the name of Rav, and some say that it was Rav Chana Bar Bizna said in the name of Rabbi Shimon Chasida, and some say it was Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It is preferable from an ethical perspective for a person to throw themselves into a fiery furnace rather than to humiliate someone else in public. From where do we derive this? From Tamar, the daughter-in-law of Judah, when she was taken out to be burned. So we are all familiar with the story of Tamar and Judah.
No.
Okay. Judah, the son of Jacob, had three sons, Er, Onan, and Shelah. His oldest son married a girl by the name of Tamar, who came from a very righteous family, but she was very pretty. And he didn't want her to have children, thereby diminishing her beauty. So he would make sure that his seed would be wasted on the ground and not cause his wife to become pregnant. So God killed him, and then she married the second son. And he did the same thing again, and God killed him as well. At that point, Judah said, like, this girl, her husband's die. I guess they probably didn't tell him all of their, everything that was going on, and probably didn't know. Maybe he did know, I'm not sure. But the bottom line is that he said, how about you go home and wait until my youngest son will get older, and then you can marry him. Um, at any rate, she had been extremely righteous and modest in her father-in-law's house, in that she even wore a veil when she was at home, or in her parents-in-law's house. So Judah actually didn't really know how she looked. At any point, Judah's wife died. His wife dies. I think Judah's wife dies, if I'm not mistaken. And he's going on his way to shear his sheep. And Tamar thought, okay, well, here's my chance to have a child from this family. So she acted as a prostitute, and she sat at the corner of the crossroads, knowing that Judah was coming. And she asked him to be with her, and he agreed. And they each went on their way. She asked him actually, well, what are you going to pay me? And he said, I'm going to send someone with one of the goats from our flock. She said, okay, and what's going to be the sign? What collateral are you going to give me until you get there? And he gave her his walking stick and his seal, like his signet ring, and his piece of rope. At any rate, he goes back to do whatever work it is, and 3 months later, um, the news gets out that she's pregnant. She wasn't married at the time, and so she was taken out to be burned. And when she was taken out to be burned, she sent a message to Judah saying as follows. Let's look back inside. As she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law a message saying, I am pregnant by the man to whom these belong. And she said, examine these. To whom does this seal, cord, and staff belong? Despite her dire situation, she was about to be thrown into a flame. She did not reveal that she was pregnant with Judah's child. Rather, she left the decision to him to avoid humiliating him in public and let him make the decision whether he would reveal it or not. And he did. He said, indeed, she is pregnant from me. And the rest of the story continues. So from her, we learn that it is, from an ethical perspective, it is preferable to be burned alive than to make someone else embarrassed or ashamed. Back to the concept of spices and smells, the sages taught if they brought before him both scented oils and a branch that comes from the myrtle tree, Beis Shammai says, first one recites a blessing over the oil and over the myrtle branch thereafter. Beis Hillel says one recites a blessing over the myrtle branch first and over the oil thereafter. And Rabbi Gamliel said, I will decide this dispute in the favor of the opinion of Beis Shammai, that one should recite a blessing over the oil first because oil is more significant. With regard to oil, we are privileged to enjoy its fragrance, and we are privileged to enjoy it by anointing ourselves with it. They used to use oils like a perfume and deodorant. With regard to the myrtle branch, we are privileged to enjoy its fragrance. We are not privileged to enjoy it by anointing ourselves with it. And Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of the decisor, Rabban Gamliel. The Gemara relates, Rav Papa happened to come to the house of Rav Huna, the son of Rav Ika. They brought before him both scented oil and a myrtle branch. And Rav Papa took and recited a blessing over the myrtle branch first. And only after that he recited a blessing over the oil. Problem. Rav Huna said to him, does the master not hold that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of the decisor? Rabban Gamliel said that you have to put the oil first. Rav Papa said that Rava said the following. Rava said that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Beis Hillel, which was that first you make the blessing over the myrtle, and after that over the oil. The Gemara comments, that is not so, as Rava did not issue the ruling. Rather, Rav Papa did this in order to extricate him from an unpleasant situation and justify his conduct. Rav Papa made a mistake, but instead of saying that he made a mistake, he said that Rava says that the law goes accordance with the opinion of Beis Hillel, which was not true. Okay. Let's do one more paragraph. Our sages taught in a brisa, if they brought before them both scented oil and wine. Beis Shammai say he grabs the oil in his right hand because the blessing is first over the oil, and the wine over the left hand. He makes first the blessing over the oil, and then recites a blessing over the wine. Beis Hillel says the opposite. He grabs the wine in his right hand and the oil in his left hand. He recites a blessing over the wine, and then after that, a blessing over the oil. After he has recited a blessing over the oil and anointed his hands with it, he smears it on the head of the servant so that his hands will not remain perfumed. And if the servant is a Torah scholar, he smears the oil on the wall. As it is unbecoming for a Torah scholar to go out perfumed into the marketplace, in those days, people walking around in the marketplace perfumed was not for holy and saintly reasons. Thank you guys for joining us. As we continue to explore the laws of blessing, today we covered a lot of ground in terms of the blessings over scent, over different kinds of spices, perfumes, and oils. Tomorrow, we are not, I have to cancel tomorrow morning's class. I have to take Mushka to the dentist. So tomorrow we will not have a class. Zalman, would you be able to relay that information to Chaim?
Sure.
Thank you very much. So those who will see you Saturday morning will see you Saturday morning. Those who will not see you Saturday morning will see you, God willing, next week, Tuesday. Also, I'm trying to gauge interest in some kind of I'm thinking to have a men's night with steaks and beer one evening, maybe like an $18 cover charge or something like that. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that sounds good. I know that the Chabad on the beach does that, like they call it,
A men's club.
yeah, the cigars and scotch. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I always thought it looked nice.
Okay. Sounds good. So I'm not sure exactly what or when, but it's in the pipeline. Take care. Have a wonderful day, and God willing, we'll catch you on the next one.
Okay, thanks. I'm good with the week.
Thank you. You as well.
Goodbye, Rabbi. Take